Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. If you enjoy that intro, go ahead and hit the like button. And if you're not already subscribed, go ahead and do so. It does help out the channel. If you want to help out the channel in any other ways, there is Subscribestar, which is basically a pro to a Patreon where you get a lot of extra content and some input into what content actually makes it to the channel first. On top of that, I also own my own company, Focus Shooting LLC, and right now we're selling AR-500 steel targets. So if you're interested in upgrading your range or buying some new targets, you can go ahead and click that link in the description. But today we're going to be talking about a very nifty upper receiver from Delta Team Tactical. Now, I've done some videos on their products in the past, so my relationship with them initially was nothing. I just purchased their products because they were incredibly budget and people really liked the videos. But then later on, they reached out to me and decided that they wanted to work with me a little bit. So they actually give me a discount on their products. So I actually did not pay full price for this, but I did still pay for it with my own money. So there was no money exchange. I just get some of their products for a reduced cost, which allows me to purchase more ammo, optics, all this other sort of stuff to bring you guys more videos. So it's really nice of them that they do that. They also have a discount code for me, for you guys. I believe it's Focus5, I believe. I might be wrong about that. I'll have it linked in the description down below. But it is basically 5% off your entire order when you buy something from Delta Team Tactical. And for the YouTube censor that is watching this video right now, we are talking about an upper receiver, which is not a firearm. On top of that, this is also in its original configuration, exactly as it arrived to me from the factory. Now, right off the bat, I do actually want to say that there actually were a couple of issues that I had with this upper receiver right off the bat. That is to say that both the charging handle and the upper receiver that I received, which is just a DPMS Gen 1 style upper receiver, I suppose, were both out of spec from the factory. So when they arrived to me, neither the charging handle nor the bolt carrier group would fit properly in the upper receiver. And which is a little strange because it should just be a pretty standard AR-10 upper receiver. I checked the bolt carrier group and it worked just fine in my other upper receivers, sorry. And the charging handle didn't work in any of my upper receivers. But my other bolt carrier groups wouldn't fit in here. So both of the upper receiver and the charging handle that I received, which is I believe they call it their Holy charging handle. So it's Ambidextrous. It's fairly nice, not the highest quality, obviously, a little out of spec. But neither of them were machined properly on the inside. That caused the bolt carrier group to get stopped about halfway in, and the charging handle would not fit at all. So to remedy this situation, I sanded down the outside of the charging handle, as you can see, as the anodization is all gone, and I sanded off the nubs on the side as well. So now it just slides into place, which isn't the greatest for retention, as it will just fall out if you don't have your bolt carrier group in. But I needed to make it work, so I did in fact make it work by removing a lot of material from the outside of the charging handle because it was made incorrectly. The other issue that I had was that the bolt carrier group would not fit in the upper receiver properly. As you can see, it now does fit in the upper receiver just fine. So what I had to do there was I had to cycle the bolt manually by hand several hundred times. Aluminum shavings were coming out of the upper receiver as I was doing so quite vigorously, to where the bolt carrier group would actually slide forward and backwards without any hesitation or hiccups. Now, with all of those problems right off the bat, I had to do several hours of work just to get it to where the bolt carrier group and charging handle would fit. I was pretty sure that the entire upper receiver was going to blow up on me when I tried to shoot it. So I took it out and I shot it, and it worked just fine. And it was fairly properly gassed. We're going to talk about the barrel later. And then it just kept running, and it kept running. For being what I considered to be a really shoddy product, at least in the upper receiver and the charging handle, it actually just continued to run and run. So at this point, we're about 500 rounds in, mostly Wolf. I pretty much shot the last of my Wolf 145 grain, the military classic. We put about 400 rounds of that. I put a little bit of match ammunition through, some Hornady AMAX ammunition. And on top of that, we also did some M80 ball ammunition, some really cheap like Ammo Inc., which is really terrible ammunition. It's worse than Wolf, but it is brass case. We put about 100 rounds of that through it as well. And we had absolutely zero issues, and we didn't clean it once. Now, as I mentioned before, about 500 rounds is when you need to start cleaning an AR-10 to make sure that it is reliable. And I can honestly say that this entire setup was incredibly soft shooting. Now, I know it has a muzzle brake on the end, but it has also gassed properly. So the charging handle, as I mentioned, it's ambidextrous. It's not the highest quality, obviously machined a little out of spec. It also does have some play in the actual wings themselves that you use to manipulate it. The bolt carrier group is a full profile bolt carrier group. It doesn't have any sort of lightning cuts on it like a lot of nicer bolt carrier groups do. That being said, the staking on top is very, very good. The ejector is incredibly strong, and the extractor is also incredibly strong. So I had no issues with extraction or ejection. Generally speaking, the ejection pattern was at about 3:30 to 4 with steel cased ammunition and about 3 o'clock with brass case ammunition, which in my opinion is perfectly gas for an AR-10. So like I said, even though I had some issues in the beginning, this upper receiver group has been 100% reliable, which I was very, very surprised about. Now, the upper receiver, though it is out of spec, it is just a DPMS Gen 1 style upper receiver. It fits just fine on my PSA Gen 2 lower. But I mean, it's fairly large and bulky, doesn't have a lot of material removed, so it's fairly heavy for what it is. But once I had removed the excess material from the inside, which was not properly finished, it ran 100%. So now that we talked about the upper receiver, the bolt carrier group, and some issues I've had, let's go ahead and talk about the barrel. Now, the barrel is one of the ugliest profiles that I have ever seen. I'll try and show you guys a close-up picture of it. But it is a carbine length gas system on a 16-inch barrel, which generally speaking, you want a mid-length gas system or longer on a 16-inch barrel. But this is a carbine length system. Now, my 12.5-inch AR-10 pistol also has a carbine length system, but that fits that a little bit better. So I was expecting a very, very violent recoil impulse. But as I mentioned, even though it is a carbine length carbine length gas system, so you are getting a little bit faster of a recoil cycle, it's gassed properly, so it's still a very, very soft shooter. On top of that, it's somewhat of a weird profile. So the initial profile is fairly standard. It's not really a heavy profile, it's more of a medium profile. You have a really good kind of neck right next to the gas block, so you have a lot of material pushed up against the gas block, which is good in my opinion. And then it tapers down to a lightweight profile, and then it tapers down to a pencil profile for like the last 4 inches or so, and then it actually tapers up to where you can put your muzzle device on. Now, in this case, it's shipped with a 3-port muzzle brake, which is fairly small. Actually, it's a lot smaller than some other 3-port brakes that I have, and it also has 2 holes on top to control the vertical recoil. So I expected the barrel to be very violent and very over gas, so it was not going to be very pleasant to shoot. On top of that, I also thought that it was going to be very inaccurate because there's not a lot of material on the edge of the barrel or on the last like 6 to 8 inches of the barrel. It's less than most of my 5.56 barrels. It's a very, very thin profile on the end, but I did some accuracy testing with it. And with a 5 rounds of Hornady AMAX, I was getting about 1.5 MOA, maybe a little bit more than 1.5 MOA. And with Wolf, I was getting about 2 MOA. So I'm not going to say that this is a 1 MOA gun, but I would say that with the right ammunition, you're certainly looking at 1.5-inch 5-round groups at 100 yards, as long as you're doing your part, of course. And that is honestly just fine. You don't need 1 MOA unless you're really trying to stretch it out or you need more of a precision gun. I know a lot of people say that they like to have everything shooting 1 MOA or better, but that's more optimistic, and it really requires you to be shooting match loads, and most of the ammunition you're going to be putting through it anyways is not going to be 1 MOA. So getting 2 MOA with Wolf 145 grain, very, very happy with that, as that is generally what I shoot, although I am getting low on it. So just to reiterate a little bit, I expected the barrel to be horribly inaccurate and to be horribly overgassed and to be very unfun to shoot, but it ended up being very soft shooting, gassed properly, even though it does have a shorter gas system than I would like, and it's actually fairly accurate, even though it does have a very, very lightweight profile. Now, let's talk about the rail, because the rail is one of the coolest things on the upper receiver. So, it is a pick lock system, and the only thing I don't like about it is that it doesn't have any retention tabs to stop it from rotating. So it doesn't lock into your upper receiver, doesn't do anything like that. It just clamps onto your barrel nut, and that's all it does. So, what you have is you have a 15-inch rail, so you have 15 inches of rail space up top, which is plenty, especially on a 16-inch barrel. And then you have, at the end, you have a pick lock system. So you have Mlock on the 3, 6, and 9 o'clock positions, and then you also, at the end, last 2 inches, you have 3 slots of Picatinny at the 3, 6, and 9 o'clock positions. On top of that, you also have QD points close by on either side, so if you're a lefty, that is nice. And you also have 3 QD slots on the end of your pick lock system. So you have a lot of QD points for slings, for bipods, for whatever you're running. You also have a lot of good rail space at the end, so if you're mounting lights or lasers or bipods, it's very easy to mount that to Picatinny. You don't have to buy any other Mlock slots that fit into your rail and then tighten those down. It's built into the rail itself. It does add a little bit of weight at the end, but I'm not sure if they did this on purpose, but your pick lock system here at the end is actually over the lightest portion of the barrel, so it actually balances out very well because the barrel is very light, where these guys here are a little heavier. But I really like the system. 15 inches is a really long rail. It looks really good. It's 60-61, I believe. It does have lightning cuts along the entire upper portion here, so they have little circles cut out all the way through. It's not the thinnest rail, it's not the lightest rail, but on most builds, I'd prefer having a few extra ounces of material. It's going to be a little stronger because even some of your really expensive, really Gucci rails that are super light are actually not very strong, whereas this is actually going to be stronger than some of those rails, but it is, of course, also going to be heavier. So the rail, in my opinion, is really nice. It makes up for how ugly the barrel profile is, and it covers it up really well, so you don't really notice it unless you look really close. It has all of the attachment slots you could ever want. It makes mounting anything you could possibly want very easy and gives you a lot of space to do it on. The only thing that I would really like to see on it is anti-rotation tabs or some sort of device like that that would keep it more secure if you were mounting, say, lasers or even just backup iron sights, anything that you need to remain zeroed on your rail. I prefer to see some sort of anti-rotation tabs or something that keeps it locked in place. Something else that I should mention real quick just on some of the other components. So the gas block is a stainless steel gas block. It is not pinned, it just uses a dual retention screw method in the bottom. I don't believe the barrel is dimpled, so that's kind of a knock against it, but you can dimple your own barrels fairly easily if you really wanted to. That being said, 500 rounds have not had an issue with it. If I was going to put thousands and thousands of rounds to an AR-10 upper receiver though, I do like to see either a dimpled barrel or a pinned barrel or something that makes it much more secure on the gas block. That being said, the gas block quality, it is actually a stainless steel gas block, so it's not going to be a cheap aluminum gas block that you'll see on some other really budget uppers. You have a stainless steel gas tube, and your barrel nut is also a steel barrel nut, which is nice. So I prefer using steel on all of those components. I know it's a little heavier, but on an AR-10 you are going to be dealing with a lot of heat, especially if you shoot it very quickly, which I did. I got this hot quite a bit. So here it is mounted up on my Palmetto State Armory Gen 2 lower receiver. This is of course just a DPMS pattern lower receiver. It's their Gen 2 version, which is fairly nice. I know they have their Gen 3s out, but I haven't had a chance to play around with those at all. And now of course it cycles perfectly fine, very smooth after, of course, I fixed those initial issues. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, and as you probably can see in the thumbnail, this is, I believe, the cheapest AR-10 upper receiver currently on the market. Now, when I bought it, I want to say I paid $365 for it, and I bought it unassembled, so I had to put it together. So there was basically no QC done on it whatsoever, of course, because they did not assemble it. So there was no way for them to check whether or not the bolt carrier group or the charging handle was actually made to spec. So I'm not blaming their QC on that, because of course when you're buying it unassembled, that means unassembled, not put together, not checked whatsoever. You're just buying essentially a bunch of parts from a bin and they ship it to your door. So for that price of $365, I would say that it met or exceeded all of my expectations. I did not expect it to be reliable or to shoot accurately whatsoever. I was expecting it to be closer to 3 to 4 MOA with general loads, but it shoots closer to 2 MOA, 1.5 MOA probably with match loads, and maybe you get lucky with something that shoots really nice through it. In my experience, it's been a 100% reliable. Again, I had to spend a couple hours hogging out material from the inside of the upper receiver, and I had to sand down the charging handle to get them to actually fit. But once I got past those issues, everything was a-okay, and it's run perfectly fine. So all that being said, would I recommend this kit to somebody? And the answer is a little bit complicated. So for most people, I would probably say no. You're going to save a little bit of money, but you're going to have to put in a little bit of extra work. You're going to have to do all your own QC, and you're going to have to assemble it yourself. And so if you're somebody who's not very competent, not very mechanically inclined, or you're just never done anything with AR-10s before, AR-15s before, you're new to the platform and you just wanted to get in the door as cheap as possible, this might not be a good first setup for you, just because I know it's incredibly cheap, but that comes with, of course, a cost. Now, that cost generally gets paid out in your own personal time, as it did with me. Now, you could buy this upper receiver, put it together, and have zero issues whatsoever, not have to spend any additional time troubleshooting. And if something was really wrong with the upper receiver and you have to go through a Delta Team Tactical's customer service, it can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to hear back from their customer service, so it can take quite a long time to get something actually resolved. So For people who have the time, energy, and know-how, these kits do save you a lot of money. They're really fun to play around with. I enjoy the whole building process. It gives me something to do, and it allows me to build my skills in that area, as I've done it probably 20-25 times now with different upper receivers. So I enjoy doing it. I enjoy troubleshooting. I have all the tools and the know-how to fix something if it goes wrong. But if you're not one of those people, and you just want something, you know, say this is your first AR and you're looking for something that's just as cheap as possible, if you spend, you know, anywhere from $50 to $100 more, you're going to get something from a more reputable manufacturer that has better warranties, and that's going to be tested from the factory and assembled by somebody who knows what they're doing. So if you're trying to go as cheap as possible, if you're a do-it-yourself kind of guy, you like to build your own upper receivers, put them together, test them out, do some troubleshooting, then this is an awesome deal. As I mentioned, the cheapest upper receiver on the market currently. But if you don't fall into that group and you don't want to maybe get an upper receiver that works, maybe doesn't, maybe takes a lot of time to get working properly, and if you eventually have to go through their customer service, like I said, you could be out 2 to 4 weeks, and you might as well take that extra time, just save up a little bit of extra money and buy something from a little bit more reputable of a manufacturer. That being said, I enjoy this sort of thing, so I enjoy putting these things together, shooting them. Like I said, it shot just fine. It was 100% reliable after I fixed the issues with it. So whether or not this is the upper receiver for you, I will leave that up to your discretion, as you know yourself better than I do. So that's pretty much it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It was really fun to make. I enjoy doing these sorts of things, putting out this sort of content. AR-10s are really fun to play around with. And in this case, once I got it working, like I said, really, really fun to shoot. Very, very pleasant, very flat shooting, especially with the muzzle brake, so I was able to put a lot of rounds on target very, very quickly. So if you want to support the channel in any way, like I said, you can like, share, and subscribe. All that sort of stuff helps out. Check out my company if you want to buy steel targets. There's discount codes around. If you look for them, or if you message me, I'll give you a discount code. But yeah, that's about it. Or you can look at my Subscribe Star as well. You can support me for as little as $2 a month, and you get a lot of extra content, and you get automatically entered in cool giveaways. So that's pretty much it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.